Hola, mi gente, and welcome back to Streetlight Confessions. Today we have Kenny Goldstein, a man who had a second chance and took it and rebuilt his life. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Streetlight Confessions starts now. Streetlight Confessions is a podcast for storytelling, conversation, and personal reflection. The views shared by the hosts and guests are their own and do not constitute medical, psychological, legal, or professional advice. Listener discretion is advised. I grew up in a time where men didn't talk. You kept it in, you handled it, or you broke. But now, I'm done with the silence. This is Streetlight Confessions, a podcast where men speak the truth about pain, about pressure, about mental health. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a man who lived some life. And I know we need this. Real conversations, no fluff, no fake masculinity. If you're tired of pretending everything is fine, follow the show. Let's build something honest together. Welcome back, people, to Streetlight Confessions. I have here Kenny Goldstein, an extremely good friend of mine for about 27 years now. 1998, right?
About that?
Yeah. I was just a young kid going into Bally's gym on the boulevard, didn't know how to work out, and I was 21, thought I knew what I was doing, didn't know what I was doing, and I met you.
And you still don't know.
Facts, because as you can tell, I've gained a lot of weight back. But so me and Kenny have a very long history. I know a lot about this man. He has been huge and integral in my life without him even knowing it. For most of you guys out there know Baby Gorilla Comics. That name came from Kenny as a joke. He was trying to make fun of me, and it stuck. So for the people that don't know you, Kenny, tell the people who you are.
I may not know myself. No, really, I because it changes all the time.
So Kenny's past, like when I met you, you were into fitness, huge fitness guy. I remember it was you, Phil, and Richie, uh, who took me under your wings, and you were huge into fitness, and that's how I got to know you with lifting, and then it became more of a personal thing where you actually let me into your life, which I don't know if that was something you did a lot back then.
Probably not.
Yeah, you were very closed off, and I don't know if you just saw me as a kid who needed some guidance, but you shared a lot of stories about addiction with me, about work life, about marriage. I remember your first marriage, and then when you met Deb. Uh, so there's a lot.
Actually, that was the second.
So Sally was the second.
Sally was the second.
Okay. So I'm wrong. So I don't know everything. But I was there. I was there with your kids. I know most of your kids. Um, Good family. I think you're a good father. Uh, you were always, you meant something to me as a young guy who was looking for someone to look up to. And I don't know if you know that about me at the time, because I was a loner, you know. Um, and you guys took me under your wing and taught me how to work out. And you, and I know this interview is about you, but it's turning into more like what you mean to me. And for me, that was huge. Like, because I was a loner. I didn't have people, I didn't hang out with people my age. It was always older people, you know, because I didn't relate to people my age at that time. Like 21-year-olds were going out partying and, getting high and doing all this. And I was 21 years old and getting married like a year later. And I think I was actually going into the police academy. Thank God that didn't work out. Uh, when I started working out, you took me under your wing. So, like, with all that in your life and what you told me and what I know of your life, What was the moment you realized that you had to change your life from what it was before I met you to the time in 1998?
Well, if you're referencing my drug addiction, a moment of sanity. And I didn't even know it was happening. And I went to a meeting in the neighborhood on Somerset Street, and there was a fella. He was had a booming voice. That's really all I could tell you about him. I couldn't even tell you what he said. But whatever it was, it next thing I know, I went to this rehab on Harbison Avenue, and so I went for my interview, and they said you can't leave here for you can't even go out for 6 months. Well, I had nowhere to go, but I couldn't do that because I guess my addiction was more important. But soon after that, so I left. I left that day, and I ended up in an abandoned house with some other drug addicts, and eventually they called to see if I'd gotten home. Well, we didn't have a phone, but they called a friend who had a phone, and next thing I know, I made a phone call for Giffray Medical Center, and that was the best decision I ever made. And that was right after that, when my wife Sally at the time, when they found me, and I made the phone call, and I went away, and I almost got thrown out of there for my behavior. My wife's name was Sally, and Giffray Medical Center was a feeder for a halfway house, the Salvation Army. What did they call the Salvation Army? The Sally. So I thought, yeah, really, like such insanity. I thought they were all going to see Sally, like she's the only Sally in the world. And so we had meditation in the morning. We were saying goodbye to this guy Bob, and he's talking about going to see Sally. That's what I heard him say. That's not necessarily what he said.
Exactly.
And next thing you know, all 126 pounds of me I had my knees on his chest, and I'm hitting him, and they're pulling me off, and they took me upstairs. What they call staffed me, and made me cry, and told me I had to leave, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't have a home at that point, and anything I had on wasn't my own. I had a bar closed to go away, and so I had to agree to something. And what I agreed to, if I wanted to stay there, every meeting, every meditation, every lunch, dinner, breakfast, I had to announce myself. My name's Ken. I'm an addict and alcoholic. And I'm the biggest asshole here. And I said that probably 5, 6 times a day in front of other people, but they were just like me. But their story might be a little different. And I even did it in a public meeting where there were 1,500 other drug addicts and alcoholics in this room on a Tuesday night at Giffray Medical Center. And I had to announce myself, put my hand up, and of course there were catcallers in the yes you are the biggest asshole here, and but that was the start, and it's the best decisions I ever made.
Wow. And with that addiction, how what gave you a glimpse of hope? Like what gave you a glimpse of hope after going into rehab and dealing with that? Like, because I'm assuming you weren't in the right state of mind, obviously, because the drugs were taking over. The drugs were controlling you. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Um, what gave you a glimpse of hope that this was going to work?
About 2 weeks into Jeffrey, I did what I was asked to do. I told to do. I got a sponsor, and it was a guy, Steve. We'll leave it at that. And another booming voice with a booming message. And if you don't pick up a drink or drug, you can't use it. And for some reason, that stuck. And with all the other insanity that I had acquired over the years, I've never used after that. Never. And I went to jail, not for long, but I was locked up, beat up, hired, fired, all those things. But I never used.
And then, like when I met you back in '98, you were in recovery for how long at that point?
12 years.
Wow.
1986, April 2nd, I went away to Jeffrey Medical Center.
And during this whole time, you had kids.
Oh, yeah.
How many kids did you have again?
Well, I have five blood, and I have two terrific stepdaughters that are mine. They are.
During this point in your life when you're going through addiction and rehab and all that stuff, like, how was your relationship? Like, how did that affect your relationship with your kids?
I remember telling them all at some point, individually or together, and I'm not really sure, but I wanted them to know who I was because I figured somebody was going to tell them. It might as well be me,
Yeah.
But they were really young when all this was going on, and let's not. And pardon me.
Take your time, brother.
Wow, I have. It's hard to reflect and not and break up. It's just I abandoned my first two sons. But being sober, something happened that would have never happened if I didn't change, right? And so on my 70th birthday, my oldest son had a birthday party. I'm moving around. I'm not really uncomfortable, but I just don't want to bawl in public.
It's just me and you right now.
Okay. But he had a birthday party at his house with my daughter-in-law Kim and the babies and everybody else. If I don't get sober, that never happens. So I highly recommend being sober.
I could imagine.
You get it?
I've had these conversations with you, and I know what your kids mean to you. I know what your family means to you. I know how much love you have to give as a human being and as a man.
Pardon me, I got to do a wipe here.
It's all right. Like, I know a lot of the story from our personal conversation and stuff like that. I know who you are. Like, I see Kenny. Like, I know you after addiction, and I know the stories you told me of addiction and how you came through with it. That's power. Like, you did what most people don't and can't,
They can.
but they choose not to.
It's a choice.
It's a choice, and you made that choice. So,
Am I allowed to curse?
yeah, You can curse.
I was so fucked up that even when I got clean, I was still fucked up because I had to learn how to live again. Stuff my mom and dad never taught me,
Yeah.
so.
How did you rebuild everything with your kids? Like after the
Well, again, they
addiction?
didn't know. Only Brett and Ryan, they're the only ones. And they were babies when I left.
Right.
And, but terrific mom, still friendly with my first wife, which is a miracle because, she never did anything wrong to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you had a lot of forgiveness to ask for.
But she was willing.
Yeah.
And, and then second wife was equally, I was difficult and worse because my addiction had progressed. And then I met Debbie. And we're not together, but what a great babe. Serious.
We're going to get into that. We're definitely going to get into Debbie because
Terrific.
love, best thing ever happened to you in your life.
No doubt.
And that's from me looking out, looking in. You just mentioned your parents. And I remember times when you would take me with you, you had to go take your parent, give your dad something or take something to your parents. You were I want to say you were a daddy's boy from what I remember. But you absolutely adored your parents. Like I remember that the love you had for your parents. What did they teach you about love?
My dad treated my mom like she was his girl. Everybody knew they were married. It was his wife. But he treated her probably the same he did when he first met her. He'd swat her on the butt on the way up the steps, and he'd say, "Let's go to bed, Jacqueline." And he'd take her and say goodnight to the kids. And I remember, and that's when it occurred to me, that's how to treat a woman.
That's
serious.
Awesome.
And I had seen it 1,000 times, but it never occurred to me before this one particular night. Debbie and I were at the house, and they were ready for bed, and they told us, you know where everything is. If you're staying, if you're leaving, lock up when you leave. And then he pulled my mom out of her chair and swatted her on the tuchus and said, "Say goodnight, Jacqueline." And she did. And then it occurred to me that was genius because it was never any different for him. He treated her the same.
Yeah.
It was his girl.
He loved her, and
No
that
doubt.
was obvious,
No doubt.
And that's a lot of people out there don't have that example of love, of what love should be from a wife to a husband to a wife and a wife to a husband. I didn't grow up with that example. I grew up with a completely different example. My dad was always around, but let's just say my mother wasn't the only woman in his life. So it's not a secret. Everyone knows it. But that's what I grew up around, How do you, because I feel like you were above the curve. Like you were ahead of the curve with emotions, with acknowledging your emotions, with like just you were more in tune with your emotions.
Only after I got sober.
Yes, but like even in 98, before this millennial movement and everything like that, it's not something our generation, well, you're much older than I am, but like it's not something your generation or my generation really dealt with. Like you weren't allowed to be vulnerable, you weren't allowed to show affection, or you're acting like a bitch, and that's what our parents told us. Like
mine never told me that.
Right. No. Mine's did. And most parents do, like, stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about, you know, and they put hands on you. And that's just the way it was. And they didn't know any better, and we didn't know any better at the time. So, it was just life at that time. You've always been a man in touch with your feelings and vulnerability. How does that translate to today, in today's crazy world that we live in, where men's mental health is finally seeing the light of day, and men are allowed to, or not feel shameful that they cry or they feel emotional or they show affection or anything like that?
Well, if you were watching just a few minutes ago, I was crying. So, uh, so I've never been afraid to since, my kids, they joke with me about it. Dad's going to cry. They'd like have a raffle, see how long it'll take. But so what? It doesn't bother me at all.
And that's what sets you apart.
I don't know if it sets me apart.
It does, because people don't do that. They truly don't. Most men, my generation, Gen X, that's not allowed. It's especially if you're a Hispanic man, that is not allowed. Like, that stuff that back in the day, you get a nice little not friendly smack in the tookish. you know.
My dad only hit me one time in my whole life, just once, and I guess I earned it.
You probably did, knowing
did.
you.
I did.
Yeah. Now this brings me to my girl, our girl, your girl. I absolutely adore Debbie.
Everybody loves
I love Debbie. Everybody loves Debbie.
We're not together, and I still love her.
Yeah, how can you not? How did that change your life? How did meeting Debbie, because my time knowing you, in the 20-something, 30-something years we've known each other, that has been the biggest impact in your life?
So I was in my Spanish phase. That's all I was dating. And I said to my buddy DJ one day in the gym, I said, look at that. And it was Debbie. And he said, you don't like white women. I said, I like her. And that's how and next thing I know, he introduced me later in the day. And she, when I met her, she said, I won't have a hard time remembering your name. And I said, why? She said, well, my first husband's name was Ken. I said, yeah, but I'm Jewish. She said, so's he. And I thought, that's pretty funny, and it was perfect from the first day, it was.
How did she change your outlook on love and life?
I still did a lot of dumb shit when I met her. I had, I worked. I always worked. But I had extra money. My behavior, I still had a lot of street in me. And so I wasn't selling drugs at that point. But, I was selling hot merchandise that I justified being okay because it wasn't coming out of anyone's home. It was coming out of stores. So nobody was getting hurt. But Deb, anyway, one day we got a phone call. I got a phone call. We didn't have cell phones. And she answered the phone. It was the prison system. I don't know. I forget what prison it was, but they had a phone call for me. Would I accept the collect call? And she said, she covers the phone. She said, who do you know in prison? Because this was new to her, and yet it was still normal in my life. And then I explained who they were, and I would put money on their books, and when they came out, they would steal, and I would get the product and nobody else would because they owed me. And it's pretty horrible stuff when you think about it. And she said, "Do you think you're teaching your kids the right way?" And I'd never thought that. I thought I was teaching them right because I worked. You know, Daddy works, he makes money, and we go on vacation every year. But this all enabled those things, you know. And when I thought about it, I hung up the phone. And I cut those guys off. That didn't happen anymore. And all the electric razors and, you know, all those things, water picks and electric toothbrushes and watches and cologne, and that's what they would bring me. And I had one or two people that would take it all. It was easy money. But wrong, you know. But I never looked at it like that until that day. So Debbie, right there. And another thing with cigarettes, and I know I told you this, and I used to take somebody a pack of cigarettes every day. And Deb said, "Why do we deliver one pack of cigarettes every day?" I said, "Because every cigarette this person smokes is 11 minutes off her life. And if she were to pass from smoking-related disease, there's nothing they could do about it." I got away with it. And Deb, I remember exactly what she said because it was so poignant. And she said, "Do you think that's healthy?" And I said, "No, that's why I do it." And she said, "Not for her, for you." No brainer.
Yeah.
And that's the last pack of cigarettes I ever bought. In fact, I didn't deliver those that day.
That's crazy. Like,
I thought I was being normal,
yeah.
but where I came from, that's what I was used to. You know, and Deb said, no, we got to go all the way with this.
So Debbie definitely had a profound effect on your life with your kids and with everything.
Everything.
Now, I want to go back for a second. Bodybuilding, which is how I met you.
But I was not a bodybuilder.
You weren't a bodybuilder, but you were lifting, like you guys lifted, like powerlifting.
I was a weightlifter.
How did that come about? Was that
My brother.
From your brother, or was that like
my brother
part of
Jeff?
Did that help you with the addiction? Was that something that?
Yeah, well, I was sober when we started.
Okay.
When he was already really known all over. And so we were going to Florida. My parents were baseball fanatics. We went to spring training when we were kids, and I wanted to take my kids and my wife to spring training. And so Jeff, my brother Jeff, hooked everything up, and we met my mom and dad there, because we knew everybody was there. My brother Jeff, his wife, my wife Sally, and the kids. And he said, "While we're here," he said, "why don't we go to the gym? You know, and if you like it, I'll train you." And that's how it started for me. And so we went to all these little sweatshops and little gyms, dirty gyms, and I was just so attracted to it. And the fact everybody knew him wherever we went. We weren't even in Philadelphia. They all knew him. He was a powerful guy. Still is, I guess. But that's how it started.
Okay. And then did that help with you, like as far as like the addiction was concerned,
Sure.
like keeping with recovery and stuff like that?
Sure. Kept me tired, out of most of my garbage, you know. Again, I didn't use, you know. And then my second wife and I were struggling. And when When I got sober, she got high, which is very common. It's so weird. But she didn't have to take care of the baby anymore. I was self-sufficient at that point. And I can say this, she's sober 2.5 years now.
That's awesome. Like it's never too late.
No. And everybody she knows died around her. And she got sober. It's so amazing. It is.
So, what would you say was the darkest moment in your life? With most people, automatically are going to assume addiction. I think that would be a safe
It's
assumption.
pretty dark.
Yeah.
123 pounds, abandoned house, starving to death. My kids had they didn't have anything.
I couldn't even imagine you at 123 pounds.
I can't either, but it's true.
If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, looking back now, what would that be?
I'm not sure, but I do know this. If I hadn't have gone through all that bullshit that I created, I wouldn't be who I am now. So I really don't know. Obviously, don't pick up a drink or drug. If I'd have listened to my mom and dad, they didn't know anything about drugs. And although my parents didn't drink, there was some celebrity, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I got a lot of attention with a drink in my hand at a very young age. And it was okay because one side of my family were all alcoholics. My mom and dad didn't drink, but her side of the family did. Her mother's side, they were all alcoholics. So it was a big deal when little Kenny was tasting everybody's liquor. So I remember my first drink. I was 5 years old. And you say, well, how the fuck you get a drink at 5? Well, it was given to me.
Yeah.
Would you like to taste Aunt Mary's highball? And I said, yeah, sure, and I could still taste it. It covered me like a blanket. It was warm, it was cold, it was sweet, it was hot. When it went down, and I got all the attention in the room. What was not to love? I'm sure that's where my addiction came from.
The love of the admiration and
absolutely.
The attention.
Yeah.
What words would you give, or what would you say to someone who is where you were now?
Follow me. But you got to make the phone call. So my hand's always out to recover, to the suffering addict and alcoholic. But I'll meet you at a meeting. I won't pick you up to take you. You have to make they wouldn't even answer the phone if my wife had called to get me in a rehab. They'd have said, where is he? Put him on the phone. I know that because they hung up because I wouldn't get on the phone. I had to make the phone call. They want you to make that decision. So I have to keep up with that. And it's hard because you don't want anybody to suffer, but we're not Miracle. I'm just Ken, who happens to know something that sober is a better way. And so, yeah, you got to make the first move. My hand's out. I'll go with you. I'll meet you, but I will not make a phone call and say my friend needs a rehab because I'll hang up on me.
So you have to make
You gotta
you
make
have to go
decision.
out there and make that phone
You
call
got it.
and seek that help.
You have to do it.
You
Or
know,
you have
no
to go
one's
to a
gonna
meeting.
do it
I'll
with
meet you there, but you got to go. If I pick you up, what does it mean? It means nothing.
You're not making any effort.
You
I'm
make
doing all the work for you.
You got to make the effort.
Wow.
And they're all dead. I mean,
Yeah.
most addicts die.
So it's been
One way or another, you're going to stop using.
so you've been sober longer than you've been not sober in your life at
Yeah,
this
April
point.
2nd, 1986.
Damn.
That's
Almost 50 years.
it'll be 40.
40. Wow. That's awesome.
If I don't
dude.
get struck by lightning, hit by a car, and or any of those other things that
That's funny. But with that said, I want to say thank you for being here in front of a camera, telling your story. Hopefully at least we can help one person show that it's possible. Like addiction is not the end all be all.
It's not.
You just have to want to change.
You got to want to change.
And I'm sure it's hard work. But you have to be willing to put in the work. Nothing in life is going to be that's good is going to be easy. It's just not. It's not the way life is.
I still pray for my character defects to be removed because I have so many. And every time I seem to get rid of one, some more pop up. They're waiting in line almost. Let's see what we can fuck with Ken this week. But it's true. But I pray every day. I don't even know if anybody's listening, and surely if there is somebody up there, it's got to have a sense of humor watching this.
Yeah.
Because this act was like.
So with that being said, once again, I want to thank you. I want to thank you guys out there for tuning in and letting me introduce Kenny, an extremely good friend of mine to the world, and hopefully his story will help you guys out there. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the love and the support, and we'll see you on the next episode of Streetlight Confessions.